Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3.
Oh, and Alice.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Shawnee City Council. I would ask that you please silence your electronic devices at this time. I'm the City Council President, Matt Zimmerman, and I will be chairing this meeting. I will do roll call at this time. Councilmember Neighbor. Councilmember Jenkins.
Present.
Councilmember Kemling.
Present.
Councilmember Meyer.
Present.
Councilmember Adrian.
Present.
Councilmember Sandifer.
Present.
Councilmember Constance. Thank you. This time we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, I will explain our procedures for public input. During the meeting, I will offer the opportunity for public input. If you would like to speak to the council at any of those times, please come forward to the microphone. I will ask you to state your name and address for the record. Then you may offer your comments. So that members of the audience can hear your comments, I would ask that you speak directly into the microphone. By policy, comments are limited to 5 minutes, and no person may speak more than twice to any one agenda item. After you are finished, please sign the form on the podium to ensure we have an accurate record of your name and address. In addition, while we won't do a roll call vote on every vote, I will state the council members' names who vote in minority so that our listening audience will have a clear and accurate record of the vote. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Does anyone have an item they'd like to remove from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and is seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Two minutes. Okay, next item on the agenda is the mayor's item. I think we're going to set that aside for just a few minutes and come back to that. Business from the floor. Is there anyone who has comments on an issue that is not on tonight's agenda? Next item on the agenda is public items. Item number 1 is to consider contract number 2018-0037, a Shawnee Entrepreneurial and Economic Development Agreement with PBI Gordon Corporation. Pursuant to policy, PBI Gordon has requested to be considered for the loan fee repayment program in the amount of $482,000. They intend to relocate their headquarters to the Shawnee Crossings building, formerly occupied by Perceptive Software. The recommended action is to consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the agreement. Is there any discussions from the council? Is there anyone from the audience who would like to speak to this item? I will accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
We have minority from Councilmember Kemlin. Okay, I want to go back to, okay, sure. Thank you. Don Chu, CEO, and Andrew Peck, CFO, are here from PBI Gordon. I would like to say thank you for bringing your business to Shawnee. Thank you, gentlemen. All right. Next item on the agenda, I'm going to go back to mayor's items. I think we're ready to go. Rob? Tonight, I would like to welcome Bob Hamilton, who will be presenting the AAA Silver Award to the Police Department Traffic Safety Unit. Bob?
I was running a little late. We had an academy class going today, and I'm just a little bit behind. First of all, the police department is receiving a gold award this year. And I want to thank the city council, police department, the chief in the back of the room, for allowing these guys to get out here and do their work on the highway. As everybody knows, last year was one of our highest years in the state of Kansas for lives that we lost out on the highway. And I'm glad to say this year we're doing better than what we were at this time last year. I'm a law enforcement liaison that works with the AAA insurance company that we travel the state. There's 4 of us, and we travel the state and pick out the police agencies that we think have done a good job in traffic safety across our state. And Shawnee was picked, I believe this is your 4th one, Steve? 5th, okay. Some of the things that they have done to receive these is they did so by having a community-based traffic safety committee that makes regular and identifies traffic safety problems and formulates solutions. They receive points for having a departmental policy requiring the use of seat belts. I know that sounds funny when it's a state law, but we still have a lot of people in law enforcement agencies out here that are not wearing their seat belts. In education, they are recognized this year for their teen driver alcohol and seatbelt education program. For their enforcement work, they are recognized for their data-driven approach to crime and traffic safety and for being a founding agency of that program. Their impaired driving deterrence program, click it or ticket, you drink, you drive, you lose, Thanksgiving safe arrival, and aggressive driving enforcement in the DUI check lanes. They were also recognized for their close coordination with the traffic engineering department to keep Shawnee Mission Parkway traffic moving during rush hours. They're receiving their 6th award this year. You were right, Steve, I was wrong. And like I say, it is a gold award. Some of the things that really help with the quality of life is the adult seatbelt use has risen steadily from 87% in 2013 to 96% in 2016. That's a large jump. Teen belt use has done the same from 89% to 98%. Child passenger seat use has risen steadily from 89 to 98%. And vehicle crash injuries fell from 211 in 2015 to 181 in 2016. So at this time, City Council, I'd like to present the Shawnee Police Department with the 2017 Gold Traffic Safety Award.
Thank you, Bob. And our sincere thanks and gratitude to the Traffic Safety Unit. All right. Returning to business from the floor, item number 2 is to consider the adopting resolution number 1838, providing notice for a hearing to determine whether a structure at 5019 Neiman Road should be declared dangerous or unsafe. The property was significantly damaged by a fire on December 22nd, 2017. It has been posted as unfit for human habitation and ordered to be secured from unauthorized entrance. Chapter 15.28 of the Shawnee Municipal Code prescribes the steps for the abatement of structures that are unfit for human habitation. Tyler Worth, Chief Building Official, is going to make a brief presentation. His report was included in the packet.
So back on December 22nd, the house at 5019 Neiman Road caught on fire and there was significant damage to the structure. Our code enforcement officers had been working with the owner of the property to get it demolished and brought into compliance, and he has since passed away. And so our code enforcement officers then were in talks with the insurance company that was going to be paying out on the premium, and it appears like the money is going to be going to his ex-wife, but right now it's kind of caught up in limbo with that. And with it being so long since it's happened, we are kind of set here for us to move forward to bring the nuisance down. You want to go ahead and screen. So this today is to establish the resolution, which is part of our Shawnee Municipal Code, section 15.28. Make sure that the house is taken down in a timely manner. I've provided you guys with a report on my inspections that, in my opinion, it is not a safe structure at this time. We'll kind of go over through that with the pictures here. This first picture is of the front of the house. As you can see, most of the roof is gone and collapsed in. And on the next picture, there used to be a garage back here, and that is completely gone. And this is the rear of the house. As you can see, a lot of the walls are starting to collapse in. Everything's falling in, so it is definitely a nuisance and a hazard at this point. And this is just another picture of the rear to clearly show the issues. So today I'd like to request your guys' help in adopting the resolution to start the process. This resolution will set a hearing for May 29th. And before that hearing, after the resolution is resolved, there's a few steps as far as notifying the owner, getting it published, which we will do in the meantime. And then at that hearing, the owner can make any their recommendations if they think that it's not an unfit structure, kind of where they're at in the process. But this is just kind of the first stage of getting that resolved. All right.
Thank you, Tyler. Are any questions from the council? Yes, Mickey?
Is there any possibility of, well, I know if we put a lien on it, all they would have to do is just sit on it anyway and not do anything.
Correct.
What's your plans of trying to get the return on the investment?
So the only options that we really have is after we do the work, if it comes to that and the homeowner doesn't do it before the deadline, then we will give the owner the opportunity to pay us back for it first, and then if not, then the only option is to get reimbursed for it.
Councilmember Neighbor and then Councilmember Jenkins.
Yes, I would just, this is just down the street from where I live on Neiman, and, I've been asking for this for quite a period of time. I understand there are things we have to go through, and there are some extenuating circumstances here, but I would ask that this item, not this individual one, that we address this in committee somewhere, because this building potentially can sit there as an unsafe structure in our city and an eyesore for over 6 months before anything is done. And I would like to revisit this in committee so we can come up with some sort of procedure which is legal within the rules, so that this, unfortunately, it's probably going to happen again sometime. But I think we need to have a better way to deal with it in a timely manner. We don't need to have unsafe structures in our city like this, because this sucker just keeps, the wind blows and things and it gets smaller. So it just, it's a real potential liability problem.
Councilmember Jenkins.
I think Mickey kind of addressed it where I was coming from, but I don't want to pay for this. I mean, this is an insured structure, and I think you shouldn't wind up having to pick up the tab for it. I agree with Jim, it needs to be taken down at some point, obviously, because it is an unsafe structure. It could cause harm or damage to some kids or who knows what messing around over there. So yeah, it's clear it needs to be taken down at some point, and I don't think it's a lot of questions whether it should be raised or not. That building looks beyond repair to me. But yeah, I just want to make sure that we protect the taxpayers of this community. The taxpayers shouldn't be paying for this. That was an insured structure. We've got to make sure we can recoup that.
Mr. Chairman, there is a statutory mechanism that allows a city to claim 15% of the proceeds before the proceeds are paid. That will allow the city to have a lien on 15% of the proceeds, and that statute was amended in about, I think, 2016 to include fire and casualty. So I went ahead and prepared an ordinance this afternoon. It's a simple process that we've been working on for a couple of years. And it's already done. It's a simple ordinance. It just says we claim a 15% a lien of up to 15% of the insurance proceeds. And Tyler and I just haven't had a chance to look it over yet. We can have that on an agenda pretty quickly. Yeah, it's a statutory mechanism. I just copied the statute. It's nothing that you'll have to discuss at length at a committee meeting. We just verbatim recite the statutory provision and claim the lien, file it with the insurance department, and then the insurance department notifies all of the insurance companies before they pay any casualty loss damages. We have a lien on 15% of them in our city. It's a fairly simple process.
Sounds very clean cut and correct.
Yeah, it's a fairly easy one. I just need to. Tyler hasn't seen it yet, so I need to talk to Tyler about it.
Any other comments from council? Is there anyone from the audience who would like to speak to this item? All right, the recommended action is to consider adopting resolution number 1838, providing notice for a hearing at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, May 29th, 2018, to determine whether a structure at 5019 Neiman Road should be declared dangerous or unsafe. I'll accept the motion. Second. A motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Mr. President.
Sir.
Just a comment on this. I don't think we should slow down any of the other processes like the ordinance and so on in the meantime. I think we should move forward expeditiously on those items and have them before the council at the earliest possible date, because that should have no bearing on the hearing on that date. So let's just move forward. I think we move forward with that, and hopefully everybody's nodding their heads in the same direction. So let's move forward.
Agreed. Next item on the agenda is items from the Planning Commission meeting of March 19th, 2018. Item number 1 is to consider approval of SUP-05-18-03, the special use permit for the learning curve located at 11031 West 75th Terrace. The Planning Commission voted 8-0 to recommend that the governing body approve the special use permit subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. Is there any discussion from the council? Is there anyone from the audience who would like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Remove.
Second. Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item 2 is to consider passing ordinance number 3221, amending Chapter 5 of the Comprehensive Plan Land Use Guide related to office, retail, and mixed-use destination. Planning Commission recommended 8-0 that the governing body amend the Land Use Guide text map in Chapter 5 of the Comprehensive Plan to indicate mixed-use development as appropriate for the south side of Shawnee Mission Parkway between Morrow Road and Renner Road. An ordinance is required. Doug Allman, Deputy Community Development Director, is going to make a brief presentation. Welcome, Doug.
Good evening, Doug Allman, Planning Staff. This item was on the March 19th, 2018 Planning Commission agenda. The Planning Commission held a public hearing as required to amend the Land Use Guide text map. The amendment to be considered for the Land Use Guide map is to change the land use designation on the south side of Shawnee Mission Parkway between Mauer Road and Renner Road from office retail to mixed use. The change in designation would encourage the creation of developments that will include a mix of office, retail, and residential uses. At their meeting, the Planning Commission recommended 8-0 that the governing body amend the Land Use Guide as presented. It should be noted that an amendment to the comprehensive plan does not rezone a specific parcel or parcels of land. Any request to change the zoning will require notice and a public hearing. An amendment to the comprehensive plan also is not related to a specific development plan for which approval from the Planning Commission or City Council is considered. In terms of a recommendation, staff recommends the City Council consider passing an ordinance amending the Land Use Guide text map in Chapter 5 of the Comprehensive Plan to indicate mixed-use development as appropriate for the south side of Shawnee Mission Parkway between Mauer Road and Renner Road. And with that, I will make myself available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Doug. Any discussion from the council? Mr. Jenkins?
Just have some comments. We have a proposed development there already. And I think everybody in this council knows that Belmont Promenade is proposed for that area, and they came to us with a proposal. We granted them a large number of benefits, basically, from the city in terms of taxes and other abatements, and even refunding to them our sales taxes and so on. So it was a pretty big deal. And the zoning and the land use guide, everything seemed perfectly suited to the proposed use. Everything seemed to fit nicely. Suddenly, we want to change the use, but I haven't heard anything from Belmont Promenade. And I think that's the reason why we're talking about this right now, is because they have a different idea what they'd like to do now. And I think this is being done in a disingenuous fashion. I think I'd like to know what they plan to do, because what is my impetus for saying I want to change this? I don't have any impetus for that. Everything is hunky-dory. They got a plan. Let's move ahead. Everything's great. So why would I change this on a whim, basically? I'm sure it's not a whim. I'm sure there is something that they want to do there. But I would like to have them be upfront with it. So that's my concern.
Any other comments? Councilman Meyer?
I think I'm fairly confident, and maybe it hasn't been communicated to the whole council, that there were some financial issues with the previous approved plan, which honestly I've not been crazy about that change. So that is what's bringing about the interest in looking at mixed use. So I think that there has been a change in their ability to maybe build the previous project, if that helps. Maybe the whole council has not heard about that.
No, we heard about that, but it was presented as there's no pending project or whatever, and that's not true. So I don't like the way it's being presented, I guess, is where I'm coming from.
I think just, I don't want to speak as the attorney, but I think legally, if we're looking at the land use guide, we can't look at it for a specific project. We have to consider it more broadly in terms of the overall plan.
But that's what we are doing, so that's where I have a little problem. It seems a little dishonest, actually.
I mean, you stated it correctly. Obviously, this is a legislative function as compared to a quasi-judicial site-specific consideration of an application for rezoning. And I know you're aware of that. It's maybe a difference in semantics on how the governing body perceives it. I understand there's not been an application filed. If this change in the land use guide is approved legislatively by this body, it may or may not follow with an application, and it may follow with some other application that may be totally different. And I want to make sure that our elected officials are aware that this change is not site-specific for a specific development. It could be anything in the future that may come in. So this is a broad change to
Yes, that's right, and I agree with you 100% what you just said, but there is still a pending project there. Nobody's withdrawn it or anything, and we've approved it.
Oh, you mean the original
Yes.
development
It's
application?
never been withdrawn or anything. It's still there. I mean, we've approved all that. It's a done deal. This council approved it. We approved all the incentives. Everything's been approved. They just haven't moved forward with it because I think they've run into some, like Councilman Meyer said, they've run into some financial difficulties and there's been some glitches in what they wanted to do. But I don't see how we can do this if we have a pending plan that's already been submitted and approved. That's where see what I'm saying? I think that's the problem.
I understand what you're saying. That's up to this governing body, of course. But the mechanism is similar to the rezoning application, and so this governing body either approves or overrides or sends it back to the planning commission to consider. I can't answer any questions. I'm not aware of any information at all regarding a specific application or what the status is of the prior application that was considered.
But if we do this and they were to go forward with the plan we've already approved, which is an approved existing plan for the project, would they then be in non-conformance with the comprehensive guide, comprehensive land use plan?
They would be not in conformance with the guide because you would have changed it.
So let's see how I'm saying. That's really kind of, it doesn't fit. It just doesn't go together properly. It's kind of like we're playing pull a fast one and we'll just kind of switch it while nobody's looking or whatever and then go back to business. But it would seem appropriate to me that they would withdraw their proposal or something along those lines, and then that would clear the slate to do whatever we propose with that piece of property at that point.
I'm not sure if you have any more updated information on it than I do.
No, an application for a different plan has not been submitted for rezoning. The underlying zoning remains in place whether they withdraw a site plan or not. This property is actually, a portion of it's been zoned commercial highway for some time, even as far back as when the Best Buy plan was presented. So in terms of land use, this is more, as you said, a general request.
Yes, Doug, but we've actually got an approved plan for that particular site. So to go and change the comprehensive plan and master plan while we've got a pending project there seems totally wrong. I don't know how you can do that.
I think maybe catching more of what you're expressing, the underlying zoning will stay in place.
Correct.
If that is your question, the underlying zoning will stay in place. It will not be in conformance with what is currently the comprehensive plan, but the underlying zoning will stay in place.
So that's very irregular, I would think, to have a project already pending for a place and change the comprehensive plan on that particular site. And that doesn't even make sense, really, from using basic logic. That doesn't make sense. So it seems like we're out of step with what we need to be doing here. If they were to come in and say, hey, we're just not going to be able to proceed with what we have proposed. Yes, the zoning stays the same, but that's an open playing field at that time to make any kind of modification to our comprehensive plan or whatever we wanted to, because we don't have a pending project there. So this is actually a live project right now. There's been nothing to change that at this point. As far as from a legal basis, they're approved. They can move on. They can start building tomorrow.
And I would add quickly that I think what you would see in that situation is that they would not withdraw the approved project plan until this kind of goes through the entire process. So I think Greg Musil, the developer's
But the cart
attorneys.
before the horse, though.
Well, I think for them, they don't want to withdraw something that's been approved and then give up the current opportunity without something else that they're going to go through the process with. So I think at such time you would go through a revised project plan as well as through the rezoning.
Councilmember Constance.
Thank you. So if we use, does that sort of broaden the possibilities, or does it say if we do mixed use, then we could not do a commercial only? Is there some way that the comprehensive plan can say this could be both possibilities?
These two concepts are, I know they're related, but they're entirely separate. This property will retain the commercial zoning that it has in place. If there's an application that would come in to consider a change of zoning from the current to the, if this governing body moves forward and approves a change to the comprehensive plan, if there's an application to comply with the new comprehensive plan reflection, then when you consider the new application, the golden criteria, the next to the last one, I believe, is conformity with the master plan. So a change of zoning would be in compliance with that factor of the golden criteria. But otherwise, it would stay with the same zoning is in place. If that zoning is withdrawn, then they can come in and rezone it to another, assuming it would be a mixed density. It could be. It remains in place. Yes. Correct.
The zoning would take precedence over any land use that's shown on the property. The entitlement of the zoning itself has more weight than the land use designation on the future land use guide.
It's vested.
Councilmember Kenley.
Yeah, and this is a concept we had to discuss quite a bit back with the Vantage plan. And kind of like the city attorney said there, when we are considering a rezoning, which this is not, we have to legally, there's certain factors we can consider. And one is the master plan. And so if we change the master plan now, there's going to be some sort of obligation when the zoning application comes in. And so that's the problem I have, because if a mixed use came into rezone now, it would not be in conformance with the master plan. And I think we all know there is one in the works. That's why this is happening. But when it comes in, if we've changed the master plan, now at least that part of the golden factor has already been set for us. And so the same thing happened at Westbrook Village, which was not what happened with Vantage, which was we changed the master plan months before we changed the zoning. And it was harder to deny the zoning requirement when the master plan had been changed recently or in advance. And so that's the objection I have, is we don't need to change the master plan to rezone this area should a different project come in. But if we change the master plan now, we will be under a different set of circumstances once the rezoning comes in for the new project. And so I don't like pre-making a commitment in this area. I also don't know if it's been shown to me properly why this area is no longer sufficient for office commercial and why the mixed use designation has to be added to it. Like Eric said, there was a plan approved here. There's been 2 plans approved here since I've been on, benefit districts and everything else. So I'm not sure it can't be developed as is. I haven't been shown that enough to convince me to vote to change the master plan. So that's where I feel like Eric's saying we're almost pre-committing to something once we say we'll change the master plan. Because when we were sitting there testifying on Vantage, we had to go through all these golden factors and whether Vantage applied to this one, that one, that one, and that one. And we're kind of pre-setting one of those golden factors now if we change this to mixed use. And so I would rather see a plan come in and decide to rezone it without changing the master plan and pre-committing.
Councilmember Meyer.
Yep. I see what you're saying, Councilmember Kimling and Jenkins. I guess I'm viewing it as we discuss it as not necessarily prejudging a current or future project, but perhaps opening up our options because we will still be able to see the revised project plan and make a determination. And you're right, it does change one of the golden factors, but there are still many others that I think we can look at. And I think it is a way of us maybe having the opportunity to look at some different plans. And again, we ultimately have the decision whether or not that fits. So I don't view it as limiting. I view it more as expanding the opportunities for the city. And I do think, just as a final kind of on topic but off, but we have not, as a city, reviewed the overall comprehensive land use guide in a very long time. And I think once we get a city manager on board, I would love to take that on and have some citizen engagement in that and get everyone involved and have that citywide conversation. Again, I think we're overdue.
Speaking for myself, I would agree with the comment that it does open up options and perhaps allow us to look at something that might be a bit more lucrative going forward. I do think both of your comments are valid, have good points. I certainly don't want to walk away from an opportunity that maybe perhaps a better plan. It's my only input. Any other comments from council? Is there anyone from the audience who would like to speak to this item?
Mr. President, members of the council, Greg Musil, Rouse Freth, 5250 West 116th Place, Suite 400 in Leawood, Kansas. I was hoping to sit here quietly tonight and walk out quietly, but I guess I'm not going to be able to do that. As many of you know, those of you who are on the council when the Belmont Promenade project was approved, I was representing that project at the time, and I know we have a couple new members that I'm sure have got up to speed as best you can with the learning curve. I'm a little troubled by the notion that we're doing something dishonest, or that we're doing something to try to sneak something by somebody in the dark of the night, because we're obviously here, and I suspect you'll have some speakers just as there were at the Planning Commission. After, as I understand it, your interim city manager notified them of what is a legislative review of your comprehensive plan, which doesn't require the same kind of notice as a rezoning, because it's not a rezoning. It doesn't do anything to a specific plan. What this does, I think Councilmember Constance, you hit on this. We can build a pure office retail plan as is approved and is zoned today. And we have a plan approved with a financing plan that if the markets work and everything else work, that might work. What this would allow, not just this property, but any property between Maurer and Renner on the south side, is the option of doing what you're seeing all over Johnson County and all over the metro area. And if you go to National League of City meetings or American Planning Association, you see that people want in their development a residential component. Whether you talk about Mission Farms in Leawood and Overland Park, or you talk about City Center in Lenexa, or Prairie Fire in Overland Park, you look at those places and a residential component gives you options you don't have without that. And I understand it is one of, 15 factors you should consider under the golden criteria, among others, all of which are weighted differently depending on the project. It certainly isn't a get out of jail free card just because you comply with the master plan. I'm sure this body has turned down a number of rezonings in the last year that complied with the master plan but had other problems with the site plan or the design or the density or the traffic. So on behalf of all the property owners that would be involved by this, that have an opportunity now for you to consider, you read the amendment, it says you should consider mixed use in these areas, which is something you can't do now under your master plan. You could do it in a rezoning, at which time you would then conform your master plan to the rezoned mixed use area. So I would encourage you to adopt this as your planning commission has recommended 8-0, because it simply allows a different option for development on this property and others. Every property in town that's zoned something, if you change the master plan in that area, it doesn't affect the underlying zoning. That underlying zoning can still be built. And you've offered something different, maybe more restrictive, maybe less restrictive by changing the master plan. In this case, I think what you would be doing is taking a step toward encouraging those types of developments that are being done all over the county and all over the metro area. And the fact that there is an individual project, if it came back to you, you would have every legislative and quasi-judicial power to review that under the golden criteria and your own discretion within those criteria to say, no, this is not a plan that we can accept, or yes, this is. I'd be happy to answer any questions to the extent I can, but I would urge you to follow the recommendation of your planning commission if you so choose.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? Councilman Aber.
Yeah, Mr. Musil just brought up, one of the things this last NLC meeting I did is spent 12 hours going through courses with working on development things. Basically, you were giving a plot and you wanted to redevelop it, and you could decide what you wanted to put in there, from luxury apartments, big box stores, or what. But the bottom line when you got done is you had to go and do the best you could as a developer and a governing body to make sure that this project, by all the available criteria, was going to end up being successful. And I can tell you, and there were 4 different groups from all over the United States, and we all worked at it, but the bottom line was mixed use was an important part in everybody's decision.
Councilmember Adrian.
I would like to basically agree with you, Mr. Neighbor. I'm afraid that if we don't open ourselves to the option of mixed use in various spots over the city, we're closing the door to future development. I'm a young person. I'm 33, and I know a lot of my friends who would like to live in a place where they can walk downstairs, grab something to eat, or go shopping and not have to get in their car. It's space that's green, a space that works with their lifestyle. And I'm afraid that if we just limit this to commercial and office use, we're going to be shooting ourselves in the foot. There's places all over the metro, all over the United States, where it's commercial and office use only, and their doors are closing to it. I see it as a success, and I see it as it's going to stay open longer. And I just don't want to see another strip mall in our area go under in 10 or 15 years because there's not enough business. I think we need to have at least the door open for a possible residential mix with commercial in this space.
Any more comments from council? Councilmember Kemley.
Yeah, and once again, Master plan's not zoning. So we could leave the master plan as is and have a mixed use come in and approve the rezoning for that. And so it would make it more open, but it doesn't completely close the door to mixed use rezoning.
Is there anyone from the audience who would like to speak to this item? Please come forward, state your name.
Name's Alan Godsey. I live at 6800 Bell Road in Shawnee, Kansas. So I'm from the neighborhood that lives basically next to this area that's being considered here. You just commented on more mixed-use designation. Well, look at that map. Right across the road, there's a whole crap load of area in there behind Walmart and all that. There's already some pretty huge locations in this area. So anyways, I want to read out of the city planning guide the definition of mixed-use destination category. Mixed-use destination category provides for comprehensive and careful integration of entertainment uses, commercial uses, office uses, and high-density residential uses. Now, the neighbors in this area got some heartburn over the high-density residential use aspect of this. This project already sits on top of one of the highest places in Shawnee. It's way up above our neighborhood, and you start piling up, going up, that's what high density typically is. You know, we just got a problem with that concept. So, want to read from the city planning guide where it talks about this particular area. It says, office uses are designated on properties directly behind the Shawnee Station Shopping Center, as well as on the south side of Shawnee Mission Parkway between Mauer and Renner Road. That's the area we're talking about. In order for diverse development to occur, which will sustain retail and restaurant operation in this area, it is imperative that office development be allowed to proceed and not be impaired by additional retail development, not included on the land use guide. Pretty emphatic about that point. So the golden rules have been mentioned, and we in our area would like to comment on that a bit. Because we think that this new land use guide is going to be very much in conflict with these rules. One rule being the zoning uses and character of the neighborhood. I just mentioned the height and the fact that you're talking high density right up against large lots, single family homes. That's just stark contrast right there. The extent to which removal of the restrictions will detrimentally affect nearby property. Well, we think that will have a detrimental effect. Length of time subject property has remained vacant as zoned. Well, I heard in the commissioners, and I didn't get a chance to challenge this, that it's been vacant for a long time. No, there's a lot of people that live in that area. It's not been vacant. There are a couple of vacant lots up there, but there are also people that live in the development area. And on the other side of that, the west side, there's a lot of homes. Conformance of the requested change to the adopted or recognized comprehensive plan. Well, that's one of the things you guys have been talking about. Impact of the proposed development on community facilities. Roads, crime, things like that. We've got a lot of concern with that too. Opposition or support of neighborhood residents. We're very opposed to this change. So kind of the other thing that occurs to me here is, kind of back to how this thing started. This is a request from there was a letter written from one of the property owners up in that corner of the development area to the city, and that's what started this whole thing. So I'd like to read from, again, the city planning guide about sort of how the process was done before. It says, to evaluate future development in this key area in the 2008, the city hired the consulting team of Rules Evans Zimmer Real Estate Services to create a corridor vision plan and market analysis of the I-4035 corridor. Resulting document, the I-435 corridor land use analysis and market study, was accepted by the governing body. And so, you know, what's the process here? Is it planning? Is it studies? Is it analysis? Or is it somebody shows up? Some guy who owns a piece of property. It seems like, to me, this is sort of the tail wagging the dog, if that's how it goes. And I think that, you know, as has been commented here, this whole process just seems like to us it needs to be, this one needs to be tabled and put off to a later date. So that's some of my feedback, and we've been meeting with the neighbors and having some discussions about this. So this isn't just my opinion. There's quite a number of other people in the area that share a similar opinion. That maybe some others might speak tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Please come forward, state your name.
Ray Ehrlichman, 7510 Garnett Street here in Shawnee. Regarding what Dr. Kemling said a few minutes ago, the original plan was Shawnee Landing. Now it's Belmont Promenade. Sometimes people like to use the word intent. And Mr. Yatsky was just talking about a letter that was sent. I don't know if I can get this on there. Okay. I won't be able to read it, so I'm going to hold this up. This was in the Shawnee Dispatch, March 26. I'm just going to read 2 sentences on it. The Planning Commission's vote comes a month after the development of Belmont Promenade indicated he is considering adding a residential component to the project, which is proposed to sit at the southwest corner of Shawnee Mission Parkway and Mauer. The developer, Steve Beaumont, sent a letter to Shawnee Planning Director Paul Chaffee requesting the Planning Commission consider the changes. As Dr. Kemling pointed out, you can do a rezoning without changing the master plan. But if you do the master plan change, then you're kind of locked in. When the Belmont Promenade proposal came up, and not everybody that's on the council now was there at that time, there was a lot of statements made about what it was going to be and how fantastic it was going to be with destination retail and destination restaurants and this and that. Now all of a sudden, the developer wants to make those changes. Well, is it because maybe he would not be getting the destination retail or the destination restaurants? Is something totally falling through on that? I don't know. That's a question. It's not a statement. It's a question. I think it's a question that this council needs to address. That's why I think Mr. Yatsky's comment about the tabling might bear some merit. But I just wanted to bring up this article that was in the Shawnee Dispatch. I'm going to give it to the city clerk if he wants to keep it with the record of this meeting. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ehrlichman. Any other comments?
Good evening. My name is Don Lysett. I live at 6850 Bell Road, which is less than a quarter mile away from the property. Mr. Godsey has already spoken. I'm not going to be repetitive. There are about 30 property owners at the present time that we have met to discuss this. We didn't bring everyone in tonight for the reason I don't think that does anyone any good. But we do want to have someone pay attention to our neighborhood. We've been getting whipsawed back and forth, project for 4 years. Our backyards are all torn up with this sewer. That's been a fiasco. It's still ongoing. I'm going to put that aside for a minute because I get too worked up about that. I think what's more important here, and a couple people have addressed this, approximately 4-6 weeks ago, met with the assistant city manager and other staff because we had just heard through the grapevine something's going to go on up there. Sat down, had a meeting. Councilmember Constance was there. Mr. Sandifer couldn't make it. Staff knew nothing. Said, well, keep us informed. The day after that, I gave Paul Chaffee my private email and said, please pass this on to Steve Beaumont, as he's the one that apparently is making this application. I said, have him contact me. We want to sit down and talk. We may have a lot in common here, but we don't know, nor do you all know right now, because no one knows what we're talking about here. I've heard nothing from Mr. Beaumont. Following that, about 2 weeks ago, I was able to get the email address for Mr. Lowe, one of the developers in this, sent him an email, did not get a response. Sent a second email on this past Monday, or a week ago Monday. Got a response today about 4 o'clock. I know if you all have checked your emails, you had gotten an email from Mr. Godsey essentially saying, we want to talk about this. And that's where we are coming from. I think the point that has been made, that if you approve this change tonight, it's the old adage, the camel's nose is under the tent. What's wrong with everyone taking a step back, let the developer put out what their proposal is, certainly in a rough draft form, and we meet. We have offered, and there's several of us spend a lot of time on this already, to meet on behalf of the neighborhood, report back to the neighbors, and see if we can't reach some resolution here. The concern, as Mr. Godsey said, is what is high-density residential and what is it that's being proposed here? As we talked in our meeting with the staff, something like patio homes, maybe even duplexes of a proper nature, that could be appropriate. We might not have anything to be arguing about. But we don't know, because we don't know what's being proposed. That's what we're asking of you all, is to assist us and not approve this tonight. Table this for 60 days. For goodness sakes, there's been projects there for almost 4 years now. 60 days isn't going to make any difference. And let us get together, and we would invite our council members to sit in, and whatever staff is necessary, to meet and discuss this. And it could be at the end of the day, we find out, well, nothing, we've got more in common than we disagree on. That's a common sense approach. And I think there's got to be some transparency here and some realism here. Give everyone an opportunity to know, and I say everyone, I mean you all too. Right now, you don't know really what you're opening the door to. That's what we want to know. That's what you need to know. And we're more than happy to sit down and talk with the developer, report back. We're not going to have a large group here at this juncture because we don't need it. But I would think some wisdom would prevail. Say, you know what? Let's take a step back. Let's table this for 60 days. Maybe we come up with something everyone says, yeah, let's do this. That is all we're asking.
Thank you. Councilman Sandifer?
Yes. You know, I've been talking with the neighborhood for a few years here now on this. And they've been wanting residential along with it of some sort when we were talking commercial. Now there's a consideration of this vote tonight is not a definite. I mean, this doesn't say that there's going to be residential there. It says that we believe that it might be okay there. Right across the street from it on Renner Road is high-density residential. Right across the street. So putting high-density residential in there in chance that it might keep a development from becoming, a dead strip mall down the road. I'd like to leave myself open for that opportunity. of putting single-family houses and all up there. I mean, somebody needs to buy the property if they don't like what's going to go there. I mean, if as I've said before, a lot of the neighbors in that area, if one of you guys or a few of you guys owned that piece of property and you came to us and say, I want to develop this, what can I do? And we say, oh, the neighbors don't want you to do anything, make a park or do something like this. That's very difficult because we don't have that authority to tell you that you can't do something with your piece of property. I mean, and you guys don't have any money in the game on that corner. I mean, up on that property. You don't own it. So I feel what's going on, but I also, I find it difficult when there's some projects coming in that may help lessen the tax burden on the citizens of Shawnee. Because that's what our job is here, to try to keep the taxes down on everybody else and try to make it all work. And the development that comes in to help bring the revenues in to the city helps us not have to do anything about taxes or raise taxes on the individuals and residents. So changing something on the comprehensive plan doesn't make any difference, because this project, if for some reason it's not feasible to make it work anyway, he can still fall back on the same one. It's already approved. So this is possibly a win-win. This could be something like what you're talking about. Other than I know a lot of the residents in that area they don't want anything there. And this might be a win-win for you guys and the city. Who knows? Let's see what happens. I mean, we don't have a plan. And just voting on this doesn't mean that all of a sudden that somebody comes in here with a plan and we say yes. It has to be a win-win and work out for the city. That's all I got.
Councilmember Meyer.
Thank you. Just a couple of things that we've been talking about that I kind of wanted to point out. We've talked about zoning as an alternative option to this, and I agree that it's an alternative, but if our end goal is to not tie our hands as much legally, so to speak, zoning is far more restrictive in terms of what our legal options are following that than reworking or perhaps changing some of the land use guide parameters. So that seems like changing the land use seems like a less intrusive and restrictive way of opening ourselves up to look at other project options. Again, looking at those, reviewing those with everyone involved. Anything that comes forward, any evolution of what the current project is, it's all going to come back to us again. We're going to have these conversations again, and that feels to me like the more appropriate time to be having that conversation with the developer and the neighborhood and all of us about the specifics about their project, right? I don't see what difference what the developer wants at this point has on the land use guide necessarily, because it's going to be their project that we're going to look at individually. This just gives us a little bit more leeway in looking at a different option. The residents, I think, appropriately will have a conversation with them, as will we, if there's a new plan that comes forward. And I just come back to, I know a couple people have talked about tabling it today, and I appreciate that. And I could see some value in it, but when I think we look at tabling something, the idea would be that we're going to get more information further down the road that would better inform our decision. And I can't determine what it is, if we're talking specifically about just changing the land use guide, what information that we don't have right now that we might gain by waiting.
Councilmember Jenkins.
Okay, in a nutshell, here's my problem. We're talking about changing the land use guide, and that sounds like, oh, that's pretty innocuous, it's not a big deal. What it does is it puts us in a box. Because then, once we change the land use guide, and they come in here with a proposal that they want to put high-density housing in there, high-density apartments or something, that are going to be a problem because they are going to be in a high spot, and they're going to be overlooking and dominating the nearby landscape. So that's going to be an issue. But if done in certain ways, it may be okay. But done in certain ways, it could be really lousy too. It could be large apartment buildings that really dominate the landscape. And now I'm in a box. I'm having a much harder time saying no because it meets the master plan. It meets the comprehensive plan. Okay, that allows high density housing. So now my options here on this council to vote more freely to just say, hey, how do I like the project, or and evaluate it in its entirety and come up with a decision on that, has been restricted, because I could be taken. I went to court already once with the Vantage Place, and I have to. Those golden rules can be a real bear, and now it's going to be hard to say, well, it doesn't meet the master plan, because it does meet the master plan. So it's going to be it's going to put us in a much more difficult position if we don't like the project. Right now, as Councilman Kimling brought up, they could bring this proposal in with the zoning that's in there now. They can come in and ask to put the project in. We can look at the project, see what they have to offer, and say, hey, okay, this looks pretty good. And they work with the homeowners. They say, hey, this looks pretty good, and we move forward with it. But it's really taken some of our, not our capability, some of our ability to push back. It takes some of that away from us if we change this comprehensive plan. So, do what you will, but I find that inhibiting my ability to make a real decision at that point in time. I'm going to be somewhat restricted in the way I can make my decision, because, hey, this is the comprehensive plan. That's where I'm coming from.
Councilmember Meyer.
Thank you. I see what you're saying. I guess I just have a completely different interpretation of the land use guide, and I don't feel like we're bound to that at all. In fact, I'm not certain, but I feel like some of the other projects that we've turned down, including possibly Vantage, had land use that was in line with the project. And that's why the golden factors exist. That's why we have all sorts of other opportunities to refine a plan and make sure, one of the golden factors is the residents. It's all of those things. There are plenty of other avenues that we have to not go with the project if we don't feel like it's what's best for the community. And we've done it before. And I've seen projects go down for those very reasons that are appropriate with the land use guide. So I feel as though it is actually quite the opposite of what that characterization was. I think it opens us up to more opportunities as opposed to legally restricting us.
Councilmember Neighbor.
I just would respectfully point out that I believe we approved this in July of 2017. Is that correct? Now we're 9 months later, and we're sort of in the same spot. It seems to me that there's got to be a reason for that, and if this helps the project go forward, or at least to consider it, I would be for it. But I think we very seriously need to look at the fact that the project was approved 9 months ago, and we're still talking about it. I think we need to somehow, if we can facilitate's not the right word. We can maybe give some options to help this go forward. I think it'd be appropriate. And again, as Councilman Meyer suggested, this is all going to come back to us. We're all going to come back and get to talk about it again. But like I say, it's been 9 months since it was originally approved.
Councilmember Constance.
I'd like to thank the residents who came to speak, and also those who did come to meet with myself and the city staff. What I think is kind of a good possibility that could come out of expanding our possibilities with the revision in the land use guide, that it does open us up to meet with the neighbors around, as the development team has agreed to do. And so I think when we do that, we can find out what types of amenities and things that people would like and they feel like would really improve the area. So I feel that by opening ourselves up to another possibility, not closing down the plan A that we had, but saying we're open to other ideas, we can sit down, we can listen to neighbors. It's just kind of a way to open that up. The second thing I would like to say that I appreciated Mr. Godsey bringing up impact on city services. I know that'll be part of the discussion, but I do want to make sure that we look at that carefully if we do go with the mixed use, and make sure we know, what additional costs there will be on the city, and make sure that's accounted for in the financing.
Any other comments from council? Any other?
May I have 1 minute to respond to some concerns?
Please.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I go back to what was said a while ago. What is the problem? Mr. Neighbors, you probably put your finger on it. My suspicion is the financing isn't there, the market isn't there. We tried to argue that the first time we were in here. Said, Commercial's not where it's at. No one accepted that. Okay. I'm assuming now that for whatever reason, the numbers don't work with what was proposed. So now we got Plan B. All we're asking is, what is Plan B? Let's talk about it now, do it in a very informal fashion. Maybe we all walk in here and say, we're in agreement with this. Or maybe this little segment. But to push this thing through, I think does a tremendous injustice to this neighborhood that's been through this time and time again. And all we're asking is to get some information from the developer. I sent an email back to Mr. Lowe late this afternoon saying we'd like to get together, hopefully next week. We'd like to get together with staff, with our council members if possible, here in City Hall, and let's put it on the table and see what the project is. Surely they have some idea of what they're envisioning here, and surely they can share that with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I don't think we're talking about a certain project. I think what we're doing, like Councilmember Meyer is saying, is opening a door to future possibilities. We are going to have a conversation about anything that comes in front of us. We're going to have residents and so on and so forth. It's not rezoning something. It's not setting something in stone. What it is, it's just opening up another door, like Mr. Neighbor said, to future possibilities. And it's not about a development right now.
I'm going to share an observation. I think we have a little bit of what came first, the chicken or the egg going on here. I've worked with developers most of my professional career, and I can tell you that generally they're very tight-lipped about their projects. They don't like a lot of information getting out until they know that they've got a clear road ahead of them. It's their inherent nature, and I can understand that because they put a ton of money into their studies. I suspect that that's probably what you're running up against here. I think once they get a clear path ahead of them, they're going to be very happy to share with you their vision. That's just my take on it. So that duly noted, the feedback and the comments are appreciated. I'm going to push this ahead. Again, the recommended action is to pass ordinance number 3221 and to repeat the governing body amend the land use guide text map in chapter 5 of the comprehensive plan to indicate mixed use development is appropriate for the south side of Shawnee Mission Parkway between Mauer Road and Renner Road. I'll accept the motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The dissenting votes from Councilmember Kemling and Councilmember Jenkins. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is item H, staff items. Item number 1 is to consider contract number 2018-0038, professional services agreement for Phase 2 project administration for the Flint Street reconstruction project, PN 3432. On May 8th, 2017, the governing body awarded a contract to BHC Roads to provide project administration through the end of 2017. The project is currently under construction, and staff has requested a proposal from BHC Roads to continue to provide project administration services in the amount of $48,500. The recommended action is to consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. Is there any discussion from the council? Is there anyone from the audience who would like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion that's been made and seconded on the item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 2 is to consider contract number 2018-0039, a lease agreement with T-Mobile Central, LLC, to co-locate facilities on the city cell tower at 6501 Quivira. T-Mobile has expressed an interest for a 5-year lease with a monthly payment of $2,000 for the first year, followed by annual increases of 2%. The recommended action is to consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. Is there any discussion from the council? Is there anyone from the audience who would like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 3 is to consider approving final plans for the Police Department Patrol Car Shelter Project PN 3440. On November 13th, 2017, the governing body approved the contract agreement with Complete Construction Service to be the design builder for the Patrol Car Shelter Project. Final plans are ready for approval with the project completion targeted for late spring 2018. The recommended action is to consider approving the final plans. Is there any discussion from the council? Is there anyone from the audience who would like to speak to this item? I'll accept the motion.
We thoroughly discussed this project. I move for approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 4 is to consider the Midland Drive streetlight petition. Per policy statement number 19, a petition has been accepted by the city from a resident requesting additional lighting along Midland Drive between 68th Terrace and 67th Street. 2 additional 150-watt high-pressure sodium streetlights are proposed to be mounted on existing wooden power poles. The recommended action is to consider approving the Midland Drive streetlight petition and authorizing staff to coordinate with KCP&L for streetlight installation as necessary. Is there any discussion from council? Mr. Jenkins?
Yeah, just a little curiosity. We're talking about perhaps buying streetlights, and here's an opportunity to go ahead and put our own streetlights in now on this one. Why would we go into a deal with KCP&L? That's my concern.
Here's our answer.
Here comes the answer, man.
Kevin Manning, Transportation Manager. To answer your question, we could theoretically put our streetlights in right now, but since the buyout's still kind of up in the air, we don't really know what's going to happen on that. We didn't want to necessarily hold off. And in addition, this section of road is also unimproved, and typically we wouldn't go out and install streetlights before the road was improved like this. This section of roadway is more like we have in some of our older parts of the city where it's unimproved roadway, and there's already some power poles out there. So that's why the decision was made to basically just add on to the existing power poles with new streetlights and not go out and install new poles in the area.
I'm not against the streetlight. That's not the point. I mean, I'm saying, why don't we put it in? And I still feel that way, even though I heard what you said. And I understand what you said. It makes sense and all that. But then we're going to turn right around and buy it perhaps here in the near future, because I don't know, a lot of people on this council, I think, we're favoring the concept of buying those streetlights. So why would we have to buy 2 more? Let's just go ahead and get it. I mean, let's do it.
We haven't really explored the cost. The issue there is that essentially we recoup more of our costs, or it's more efficient if we have a longer run of streetlights. And this is basically 2 streetlights, and so we'd be paying for a meter installation costs and 2 poles for a relatively short run. So while we could certainly do it, it wouldn't be as inefficient as if, like, let's say a new subdivision's coming in and you're putting in 30 streetlights across the entire subdivision. You're getting a lot better prices. That's a little bit of mentality. Of course, with we're talking about 2 streetlights here, so in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge cost either way, but that's just why the decision was made that direction.
Can we make him understand? I understand what you're saying. I agree with what Eric said, because it based on, I know what Doug's comment last night, what they were wanting for pole, it doesn't make sense to go and do this for 2, and on the picture there were 3, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I don't want us to get in a situation we go ahead and do this now and then turn around and, oh, by the way, we're going to pay a premium because on these 2 brand new ones we just put in. All that being said, can't they at least make them LEDs rather than sodium to put it in there so we don't have to go back and, it's all going to come out in the wash, but if they're LEDs, they're still going to be going 10 years from now rather than 4 years and changing.
Yes, and I actually did inquire about that, and KCPL does not, on these types of installations, they will not install LEDs for us. They will only do high pressure sodium. And I can forward you some information on what they send me on that as well.
Okay.
That's their policy. I don't know the entirety of why that is, but that's the information they gave me. And I can send that out to the council if you'd like to see it.
And you don't have a cost of doing it ourselves with LEDs?
I can certainly look at an estimate on what that would cost if you want to table this and get that information to you.
I'd move to table this till the next meeting and see if we can get the numbers and everything, and if it comes out in our favor, I'd just soon buy them ourselves.
Sure.
Yeah.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to table the issue, do a little bit more research, and take another look at this with the city actually buying the street lamps and looking at the LED. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is miscellaneous items. Item 1 is to ratify the semi-monthly claims for April 9th, 2018 in the amount of $1,221,773.71. Is there any discussion from the council? Is there anyone from the audience who would like to speak to this item? I'll accept the motion.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on the item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, miscellaneous council items. Does anyone on the council have an item they would like to discuss? Mr. Jenkins and then Mr. Neighbor.
More of a comment than anything, but I wanted to throw it out there. I see Ann Tate Smith has left the room. She was here earlier. But it really falls into her bailiwick and the work that she's doing. And I just want to publicly recognize her for the work she's been doing. Since she's been on board, I feel like somebody just stepped on the gas pedal and we're moving forward really well in our economic development proposals and so on. And I just think that a lot of that has to do with her leadership and her skill sets and her contacts. And I think she's deserving of a real attagirl on that. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you.
I second that.
Yes.
And she's not here.
Yes, she is.
Mr. Neighbor.
Well, obviously, Eric and I, great minds, and we all think the same. I was going to say exactly the same thing. I just, kudos to Ann and her staff and the SCDC. She has brought 3 really good projects, and she's been on the property 9 months. So we look forward, don't quit now, dear, just keep on going. And, but we look forward to working with her going forward. And again, I will go back even further. One of the tools that has served her very well was from our previous economic development advisor, Andrew Nave, and that's the seed program. That has been instrumental in all 3 of the last things that have come, and it has served us very, very well, and it's unique to Shawnee, and we're starting to see the benefits.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this item? All right, no other items. I will accept the motion
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. We are adjourned.
Don't these things turn off?
Yes. I can't do it on.